Good morning and welcome to Saturday Special. Most of us are parents. We had our parents and we'll have parents. We'll have children who will be parents. But are we as parents doing our job? Do you remember there was a time when you were kids? Our parents used to throw us out of the door in the morning and tell us to go and play. Often in charge of the younger brothers and sisters. We went to play. We often got into trouble. And by the end of the day and end of the summer vacation, we had a lot of collection of memories, scars, triumphs. That was a great life, wasn't it? But today, those memories, if you talk to your kids, will seem like fairy tales. The bit about the sun always shining probably is one thing they can be sure about, but you're going and play in the heat of 45 degrees and then coming home, perspiring, dusty, is something the children of today cannot imagine. One thing is certain, and that's at the level of parental involvement and supervision in the 70s and the 60s and in my time the 40s was not even 1/10 of what is expected today. Fast forward from 1940s, 50s, 60s to 2014, and a woman was arrested. Her fault. She was allowing a 9-year-old to play in the park while she was working. Now, this is something which was unimaginable. But what's the impact of this gross interference and gross parental intervention on the children? A recent survey has shown that the children between the age of 8 and 12 found that indoor play is now the norm. They cannot even think of going out of the play. It has never splashed in their minds to go and jump in the puddle, and the distance children are allowed to play from home has shrunk by 90% in the last 40 years. Maybe if I take 70 years, it has shrunk absolutely. There was no limit to the distance that we could go to. And parenting has changed, not only in terms of what is considered safe for the children. Now parents are worrying much more about the impact on their children. They feel pressure to provide a stream of stimulating activities, and that, to me, and maybe people of my generation and your generation, seem absurd. Now, this new level of involvement and this new level of intrusive parenting has led to two styles of parenting. And both styles, believe me, are extremely dangerous to stunting the mental growth of the children. One sort of the parent is helicopter parent, and the other is the lawnmower parent. The helicopter parent, as the name suggests, spend a lot of time hovering over their children. They always stay close to the children, ready to swoop down and offer any help, any protection, direct. And this help is offered even when it's not needed. Their shadow is always on the children. The children are never able to come out of the shadow of the parent. And since they cannot come out of the shadow of the parents, they become replicas, and pale replica at that, of their parents. And the second parent, lawnmower, they are one step ahead of their children. They keep on smoothing their path, and they show that they are helping their children by smoothing the path. They don't want a pebble to hurt the sole of the tender feet of the children. The common tactic of both include interfering significantly with their children's life, and that habit doesn't go when the children are grown up. I have seen some parents go and complain to the employer when their children do not get the promotion they think is their right, or they do not get a job in an interview and they know it. And what's the impact? Do you think that enabling a childhood free from stress really helps them in the long term? And what happens when the children never learn to get themselves out of the tricky situations? Parents are not going to be there all the time. And why do we make them mental cripples? There is always a middle ground. It's not rocket science to realize that providing children with opportunities and sport is essential. It helps them gain experience, confidence, and networks that wouldn't be offered to them in adverse settings. But wrapping them up in a gold-plated cotton wool to absorb all the shocks that might hit the children is going too far. Allowing the children freedom to take appropriate risk through outdoor play is essential for their development. Risky play does not mean play in danger, but instead of that, it means allowing them to be children, climbing, jumping from the heights, hanging upside down. These are good examples. But these parents, and not only the parents, even the authorities, well, you can't play here because there is not sufficient sand to absorb the impact. What sheer nonsense. Do you believe that why the parents don't let the children go out as per the authorities? They say the unsupervised children may be kidnapped. It's absolutely not possible. Whatever the headlines suggest, the data shows that the child abduction has not increased 0.0005% since the data was first collected in 1970s. There was no such data collected in our times. But from 70s, the data has been collected, and whether you have supervised the children or not supervised the children, the growth in abduction rate is not even 0.0005%. So, risky play allows children to test their limits and solve problems. Yes, it includes learning what happens when they overstretch themselves and fall. That's the key lesson in the life. Overstretching and falling, and then knowing what your limits are. And the children of the helicopter parents and the lawnmower parents would never learn that. Apart from that, constantly intervening and providing opportunities is not good for their development. We may have forgotten those hot, hazy memories, but it's natural and beneficial for the children to be bored. This topic I'll take up some other time. How important it is for the children to be bored. A child who is not bored would never be able to achieve something really good. He might be a plodder. He might make a living. But as I said yesterday, he'll never make a life. And what is more important is not making a living, but making a life, as I talked about it in my yesterday's comments. So, boredom enhances creativity and problem solving, but constant input by the parents. Now, what does that do? That dulls imagination. And even if it's a creative class, constant prodding, constant needling, constant advising, constant supervision dulls the creativity, dulls the imagination. The children feel their robots, and it's up to the parent, with the help of the remote control, and often not so very remote control, to ensure how they move, how they act, how they work. Continuously hovering over children, constantly supervising the children can also backfire. Children whose parents frequently intervene are likely to experience anxiety. They are more likely to be anxiety prone and suffer from anxiety bouts when they grow up. It's not causal, but being constantly reduced to a level of being able to come out, like likely to be rescued every time there's a problem, that reduces even the confidence of the child. So the child becomes less confident, less imaginative, less daring, less sure of his or her limits, and naturally less of a human being. These early interactions have long-term consequences. Research conducted by at least 7 universities with the college students shows that the higher degree of parental helicoptering, the greater the risk of student depression and anxiety. On the flip side, students who are used to their parents enabling everything, they display traits of narcissism and entitlement. And the feeling of entitlement is 50%, or rather more than 50% responsible for the child being out of tune in society. Anxiety is not good, but not is narcissism. And expectation of life should not be easy. These category of parents make the expectations very easy. They assume everything is there for the asking, and in real life, it is not that. So children are being trained in a vacuum, cut off from the normal experience. Having said of all that, parental involvement, particularly from warm, loving, but firm parents, is of course beneficial. Be loving, but be firm. Having confidence in their own abilities may contribute to child's sense of security. And so will the sporting parents. But sporting, not crutching parents. When the parents are crutches, that's a problem. When they're just sporting, when the need is there, that is absolutely acceptable. And let's not forget, the amount of the traffic, the freedom and the risks need to be appropriate. So there has to be balance. And the stating the right balance does seem to be more complicated. Over the last 50 years, we have a new concept of good enough parenting. And when this concept came, people could not take up. As a matter of fact, according to one of the greatest psychologists, child psychologists, good enough parent was there in the 19th century and the early 20th century, before the 70s, when the parents would lay down the guidelines and then give you freedom to work within those guidelines. Those guidelines were the parameters out of which you could not jump. And some guidelines were bad, undoubtedly, but on an average, considered and compared to the guidelines are suffocating intervention by the parents, they were much better. Parents who are loving and provide a stimulating environment, not suffocating environment, but set up their boundaries, but don't stress doing enough, have children with the best outcomes. Let's not be blinded by nostalgia, but It's a good strategy and makes a lot of sense to raise secure, independent children who can think for themselves, who can act for themselves. Don't make children morons. Don't make them mental cripples. Don't kill their imagination and creativity. Guide the children, lay down the limits, and then let them have all the freedom. Don't forget the same old dictum, self-help is the best help. Development does not need restraints. It needs aid and help when needed, not when it's not needed. Maybe parenting has gone astray and needs to be put back on proper footing. Thank you.